So on-course strategy, this is all about understanding shot patterns, making smart decisions to shoot low scores on the golf course. So, little analogy for you. I believe most golfers play golf like they're carrying a sniper rifle in their hands. So, what do I mean by that? So you can see this golfer, we've got the green, we've got the pin, the hole, pin's maybe tucked slightly left of center. We've got a bunker here, and we've got some water on the left-hand side. So let's just use an example of you're playing the 18th hole at your golf course. It's a match play situation, and it's all square going down 18. So and let's say your opponent has hit their approach shot onto the green. We'll say it's a par 4. So you've both hit good drives down the middle. You've maybe hit it a little bit longer. Your opponent has hit their second shot, and their second shot is finished right in the heart of the green. So you know they're probably going to make, as long as they don't free putt, it's very likely they're going to make par. Therefore, you must equal that, or if you want to win, potentially you've got to make birdie on this hole. So the idea of carrying a sniper rifle in this scenario, this player is going to take dead aim at the pin and fire. In reality, how often have you gone for the pin and it's actually not gone where you want the ball to go? So going for the pin, ball's ended up in the water. I'm sure we can all relate to that. So in reality, golf is more like firing a shotgun. So when you fire a shotgun, what happens? The bullets split off and you get this kind of scatter pattern. So over the course of, say, 20 rounds in the year, if you're taking dead aim at the pin, here's an example on average where all your shots would finish. It would be this kind of scatter pattern. Okay. So understanding shot patterns, these scatter patterns. We could call this your dispersion, a shotgun pattern. I prefer to call it a shot pattern, but call it whatever you want. Dispersion, shot pattern, I don't really mind. So think back to sessions we've done in the bay, in the studio, when we're on TrackMan, we pick a target, we aim TrackMan at that target. I say, right, let's hit 10 shots of that yellow flag. No matter who you are, you're going to have this scatter pattern, this kind of circular scatter pattern. And in this example, every shot pattern will have what's called a geometric center, which is this point in the middle. Now, that's just a fancy word for the center of your shot pattern. So in this example, this player's aimed dead at the yellow flag. They've hit 20 shots. The geometric center is where 50% of the balls finish right, 50% of the balls finish left, 50% of the balls finish long, and 50% of the balls finish short. So this is the center of this player's shot pattern. Here is another example of a shot pattern. So I want you to really take a look at the image on the left-hand side. So this is very familiar if you've worked with TrackMan before. So this center line here is the target, so the center of the fairway. This dotted white line here is actually 25 yards right of the target, and this is 25 yards left. So just to go back for a second, there's something I missed there. What you should also notice about this shot pattern is that it is tilted long left to short right for a right-handed player. The reason for this is if you're hitting a shot and let's say the shot is going off to the right for a right-handed player, at impact, if the ball starts right, the club face was open. If the club face is open at impact, you've got more dynamic loft, which means the ball goes higher and less far. If, however, you've hit a shot with a closed club face, where the face aims left of the target impact, the effect of this is there'll be less dynamic loft. Therefore, you can expect when you do miss left, you can expect to miss long and left. So obviously this is for a right-handed player. If you're a left-handed player, it will be the opposite. So your dispersion will be from short left to long right. So having a look again back at this shot pattern, if we take a look at the ball that finished furthest right and the ball that finished furthest left. So this one that's finished off to the right, I'm going to say that's about 50 yards right. Okay. And we'll look at the ball on the left, that's potentially 60 yards left. So if we were to measure from ball that finished furthest right to ball that finished furthest left, that distance is about 110 yards. So this player has a 110 yard pattern, shot pattern with driver. Now, what I want you to do is have a think about that 110 yards wide. Obviously, this player is hitting it on average somewhere a good one up past 300 yards. Now, 110 yards, is that poor? Is it average? Or is it really, really good? What would your thoughts be on that? So I just want you to ponder on that for a moment. Then I want you to consider, let's take away the real mishits. Let's take away the wild tee shots. So let's say we take away 1, 2, 3 on the right. And then let's say we take away 1, 2, 3, 4. So this ball, so we're measuring from this ball to say this one. So that's about 30, and that's probably about 25. So let's call it a 55 yard wide pattern. Again, same question, 55 yards wide at 300 yards, is that good? Well, to reveal the answer, guess who this player is? Well, this player is actually a PGA professional. These are actually my shots. So this is me on TrackMan hitting, I believe, about 25 to 30 shots. And as you can see, my pattern for every single shot, 110 yards wide. But if we take away 10% of the bad ones left and right, roughly 55 to 60 yards wide pattern on average. Now, we'll look at another example. So this is Dustin Johnson, who I'm sure you're all aware of. Dustin Johnson, very good driver of the golf ball. This is every single shot Dustin played with his driver in competition from 2016 to 2021. So if we look down the bottom here, we've got yards from center of the fairway. So 0, this is all these shots here finish right down the center of the fairway. To the left, we've got 60 yards left and we've got 60 yards right. So if we measure furthest left to furthest right, we have a 120 yard wide pattern. Okay, 120 yards wide. So let's again take away 10% of the mishits. So we'll take away all these, we'll take away all these. Dustin on average has a 40 left and 40 right shot pattern if you take away 10% of the mishits. The reason why I want you to take away 10% of the mishits is because when we're talking about strategy, you can never really account, in terms of your strategy, account for a mishit or a wild shot. Like, if I shank the ball off to the right, having really good golf strategy isn't going to save that shot or lower my score. So we can only really account for what I would call 80 to 90% of your good, solid hits. We can build a strategy around that. Next example, this was taken from this year's Open Championship at St Andrews. I'm sure you recognize the hole. This is tee shot number 17. So this is every single shot that was played during the tournament. So you can see a couple of shots off here to the right, finished in the hotel, and a couple here on a different hole. So I believe I'm making a prediction here, but I reckon if you measured from furthest left to furthest right, I think that honestly could be about 150 to 200 yards wide. So what can we conclude from these examples? Well, even PGA Tour players have absolutely no idea where the golf ball is going. So perhaps we need to better manage our expectations and be less hard on ourselves. So I want you to take a close look at this next slide and let me know what you see, what you notice. So this, again, another example of shot patterns. So up at the top in blue, we've got a 15 handicap, and in orange, we've got a PGA Tour Pro. So I think each player's hit maybe about 1,000 shots here, just to kind of give you a rough idea of how many shots we're looking at. So obviously on the left-hand side, we've got distance and yards. So this is 100 yards, 200 yards, and 300. Both the 15 handicap and the tour-player hitting driver here. And down at the bottom, we've got yards from the center of the fairway. So we've got 0, that's right down the middle, this center line. We've got 50 yards left, 100 yards left, same on the right. So what you should notice, these two black lines would be the size of I would say an average fairway. So this is about 20 yards left, 20 yards right. So in total, we've got about 40 yards of fairway, which I would say is pretty typical most golf courses. Obviously, you've got outliers, really tight holes or really wide holes, but on average, I would say 40-yard wide fairway is quite typical. Most golf courses you play. So obviously right off the bat, well, the PGA Tour player is hitting a lot further. That's quite easy to see. But what surprised me when I looked at this data was actually there's not that much difference in terms of the dispersion left and right. I would expect a PGA Tour player to be a lot more accurate off the tee than, say, your average 15 handicapper. But actually, there's not that much difference. Now, I'm going to give you an example of, looking at start direction and what influences that. So if we've worked on direction before in a lesson, you should know that assuming you've struck the ball at the center of the face, it is where the face aims at impact that is responsible for the start direction of the golf ball. So let's say we hit a shot with a club face that is about 5 degrees open. And let's say we're hitting, say, a pitching wedge and the ball's going to go maybe 100 yards. So let's say our ball lands 20 yards right of the target, okay? Right on this black line at 100 yards. And let's say we look on TrackMan and that tells us that the club face at impact was, say, 5 degrees open. These aren't specific numbers. I'm just giving you as an example. So face was 5 degrees open. The ball finished 20 yards left. Well, guess what? If you made that exact same swing with a driver when the club face is open 5 degrees, it's going to start on the same line. It's going to finish even further right because the ball's flying further, essentially. So if you hit your driver 250, the ball's going to be way, way, way offline. So the fact that PGA Tour players are able to keep it in play at that distance is absolutely incredible. So that's the skill we need to master if we want to increase the size of your dispersion. We've got to learn club face control. So we're going to talk about two different aspects of the game. First, we're going to look at tee shot strategy, so that's driving. Then we're going to actually look at approach play into the greens. So the first task for you all, and I don't expect you to know the answer to this question right now, this is something we can look at potentially in a private session. You should know, or I would like you to know, how big your shot pattern or dispersion is with driver. So for me, I know my pattern with driver at about 280 yards is about 60 yards wide, okay? Doesn't mean that every single shot finishes within a 60-yard zone. I will have those 10% slight miss hits that will finish outside that zone. But 60 yards for me is my dispersion. Next question, every single tee shot you hit, I want you to ask yourself, where's the space? So where is the space? So the next question would be is, how much space do you have where your driver would land? And always, always hit driver if you've got enough space. So if we use a simple example, let's say we've got a player who has a 50-yard shot pattern, so 50 yards on average wide. If there's 50 yards of space to hit into where the driver would land, it's driver every single time. And just to give you some averages, on the PGA Tour at 300 yards, the PGA Tour average shotgun pattern from if you measure the furthest right ball to the furthest left, it'll be about 65 yards wide. So that is a large space, a large dispersion. We're going to talk a little bit about the debate between free wood and driver. This is a little pet peeve of mine. I cannot tell you how many, usually men, I get coming in for a session and they do not hit their driver. And they say, I'm more accurate with my free wood. Now, first point is club head design. Drivers are way easier to hit than a free wood. Driver, you've got a bigger sweet spot, you've got a bigger head. Free wood, you've got a tiny head and an even smaller sweet spot. With a free wood, obviously the actual face of the driver is quite small. With a driver, it's much, I would call that, deeper. So high and toe hits, you've got a lot more forgiveness with a driver. And if you look at the data, and it was interesting, this data was taken from ShotScope, and they looked at every single amateur from, all the way from scratch up to 54 handicap. And what they discovered was that amateurs are not more accurate with a free wood. And it's I would say it's very unlikely that you're more accurate with your free wood than you are your driver. Obviously, there might be outliers, but in general, I do not believe any of you are going to be an outlier with this. So the reason why I'm against hitting free wood in general, well, free wood rarely removes the danger due to golf course design. And I'm going to give you a few examples of this coming up. So why on earth would you give up 20 to 40 yards in distance, hitting 2 to 4 more clubs into the green on your next shot, if it doesn't remove the danger? Why would you hit free wood and leave yourself that far back? We know from Mark Brody's work on strokes gained, the closer you are to the hole, the lower scores you're going to shoot. So there's a reason why a lot of the PGA Tour players like Bryson DeChambeau, he probably pioneered this, or even Tiger before him, is there is a reason why they're trying to hit the ball as far as possible, and it's because they'll have less club into the green. Less club into the green equals lower scores. So another part of the strategy would be playing your natural shot shape. So depending on whether you draw or fade, doesn't really matter to me. I want you to aim only as far right or as far left as the space. So if you want your ball to curve left on the tee shot, don't aim down the right where there's bushes or out of bounds, because if you aim at that out of bounds down the right and you want expecting it to curve left, but if you hit a dead straight shot, well, it's out of bounds. So you've just been punished for a really nice straight shot. And the other thing I would say is, with your driver in particular, aim for about a 5 to 10 yards curvature maximum. Drivers are not designed to spin, so the ball's not designed to spin that much off the driver face. Therefore, ideally, we want to hit the driver pretty darn straight, but with a maximum of maybe 10 yards of curve. So a couple examples of this in action. So a few of you may recognize this. This is the first hole at Murrayfield. So we're going to look at why this hole again, we'll use a player who hits it 250 yards and they have a 50-yard wide dispersion with drive. Okay, so here's the tee here. Here's the green on the left-hand side. I've got 2 cones here. So the yellow cone is the driver pattern and the red cone is the free wood pattern. So if we start off with driver, so this yellow line here, this is 250 yards in the fairway. You can see from right to left, there's 52 yards of space. So for this player, 50-yard wide pattern, its driver every single time. There is plenty space here on this hole for this player to hit driver. We do have out of bounds down the left. We've got trees down the right, but there is 50 yards worth of space. Okay. Now, let's say this player was standing on the tee, maybe a little bit nervous, first swing of the day, and you go, you know what, I'm not hitting my driver too great at the moment, or I'm going to play free wood for safety. Well, let's say this player's free wood goes about 210. So 210 would be this red line here. So actually, if you measure from right to left between the trees and out of bounds, there's actually only 42 yards of space here. So taking a free wood versus driver, you've lost 10 yards of space to hit the ball into. If you'd gone driver, you'd only be left with 127 yards into the green. If you go with free wood off the tee, you're left with 166 yards left into the green. Now, I would much prefer to have 127 into the green than 166 every time. Why? Because the closer you are to the hole, the lower scores you're more likely to shoot. So in this example, free wood leaves you too far back, it reduces the space, and it does not necessarily remove the danger. You could hit free wood and still hit it in the trees on the right, and you could hit free wood and still hit it out of bounds. So there's absolutely zero advantage from a strokes gained perspective. And again, I'll not go into strokes gained today. It's a bit too much maths involved in that, but we can potentially at some other point. There is no advantage to hitting free wood here, none whatsoever. So it's driver every single time for this player. And what you'll notice when I'm going to give you a tool where you can go and analyze your own golf course, what you'll notice is the way golf course design is, roughly at 250 yards, that's where the most space is. This is course design. So let's move on. Another example. So this is the 5th hole at Murrayfield. Okay. So I'm going to show you an example where driver is not the club. So again, driver, this is the tee here. The green is way over here on the left. So hitting driver at 250, there's about 30 yards of space for the ball to kind of finish and land into. So this player typically would probably carry the ball in this zone here. So there's only about 30 yards of space here from this kind of bird's eye view. Now, if you've played this hole, you'll know that this hole isn't flat and that this on the left-hand side is actually a big, big mound. So there's not much space. If you've got a 50-yard wide pattern and it's all slopey and this is all rough, there's no space there to hit driver into if your pattern is 50 yards wide. Now, let's say we drop down a club to free wood, so we're adjusting down. Well, with a free wood landing at, say, or finishing at 210, you've got about 48 yards worth of space between the kind of danger, the trees on the right and some gorse bushes on the left. So in this scenario, hitting free wood increases space and reduces danger. So this hole, you have a good excuse not to hit driver. And just for some of the ladies in the group, let's say your drive would typically go, let's say probably typically land in this zone. You can even see here, there's actually more space if your ball was to land, say 150 yards up than there is to land in this area. So in this hole, the fairway actually gets wider the further you hit it. So again, must have a good reason not to hit driver. So in summary, when driving, when on the tee, ask yourself, where's the space? Really, really important question. Length is the most important thing for tee shots. There's a reason why top players are trying to hit it further, because they're gaining an advantage. Always think driver first and adjust down. You must give a reason why you are not hitting driver. For example, just like the last one, we had a 50-yard shot pattern and only 25 yards of space between hazards. Carrying the hazards or being short of the hazard in most scenarios is likely ideal if there's trouble on both sides. And again, stick to your shot shape. Approach strategy. So this is shots into the greens. Same question. Where's the space? A couple of stories for you. So Jack Nicklaus at the home course where he used to practice, he got the greenkeepers to take out all the targets and all the flags on the range. Why? Because his strategy, no matter where the pin is, was to aim at the center of the green. Why the center of the green? Well, typically the center of the green is where the most space is. Another example would be Tiger Woods. Tiger talks about picking a spot and then committing to that spot. So that spot could be somewhere on the green. It could be left of the pin. It could be right of the pin. Sometimes it might not even be on the green. So he uses the word spot. So he's looking at where the space is and he's picking a spot. Another cool story, World Cup final tonight, Argentina, Messi. Interesting facts about Lionel Messi. If you were to look at Messi's performance in the first 5 minutes of the game versus the last 85 minutes of the game, he scores way more goals, way more assists in the last 85 minutes of the game versus the first 5 minutes of the game. And I want you to watch him tonight. If you are watching the match tonight, watch the first 5 minutes of the match and look at what he does. Why does he perform poorly in the first 5 minutes versus the other 85? Well, in the first 5 minutes, he doesn't run alone. He doesn't run a lot. He doesn't run about a lot. He really just kind of stands and walks. And what he's actually doing is he's looking for the space. He's asking himself, where's the space? This is a new opponent I'm playing. Where is the space? He's just trying to figure that out in the first 5 minutes of the game. And then the next 85 minutes plus extra time, he is literally attacking that space. So that is the secret and the success of Lionel Messi. So approaching the greens, aim towards the space. As I mentioned, the space is usually the middle of the green, not always, but typically, if I was just to give you a general strategy for most amateur golfers, it would be aim at the middle of the green every time. But we can do a little bit better than that today, I believe. So another simple strategy into the greens would be take an extra club unless trouble is at the back of the green. Why? Because again, if we look at the data, Shot Scope, Arccos have come out with all this data as well. It's pretty darn consistent. 80% of shots that miss the green are short. Why? Well, it's either due to obviously a poor contact, a mishit, so the strike's not so good, not hit the middle of the club face. That could be one of the reasons for it. And the other main reason would be people tend to believe they hit it further than they do, and they base how far they hit it on like a really, really good shot where they've hit it hard and far. So typically take an extra club, not bad advice, unless there is danger at the back of the green. Most trouble is always, or usually, with the way golf course architecture and design is, most of the trouble is usually at the front of the green. So again, another reason to take an extra club. So being closer to the pin is better, but do not take on unnecessary risk, even with, say, a wedge in your hand. Scratch golfers, this might surprise you, scratch golfers score, on average, 1.8 more birdies than golfers who shoot in the 90s. So scratch golfer typically will only score 2 more birdies than a 90 shooter. And a player with a 79 score on average only makes 1 more birdie than a golfer who shoots 95. So what can we take away from this? Well, golf is and always will be about bogey plus avoidance. It's about removing the high numbers off your scorecard. So the lesson here is stop trying to force, stop trying to make birdies. Now, obviously, you want to make birdies. I want you to make birdies. We all want to make birdies. But my point here is taking on unnecessary risk in an attempt to score a birdie could lead to a high number. And that, a double bogey plus, that is what we want to avoid. If in doubt, chip it out. So if your tee shot has not found the fairway, if you are obstructed, you're in the trees, you do not have a clear route to the green, take your medicine 100% of the time when you're in the trees or obstructed. On average, if a PGA Tour player hits it in the trees, on average, they're scoring bogey. So if you were to score a double bogey or let's just call it a net bogey, that's actually a really good score from the trees. So I would encourage you, do not force it. Do not try and play the hero shot. If you want to shoot lower scores, take your medicine 100% of the time. No ifs, buts about it. Obviously, if you're just having a bounce game for fun and you're hitting an exploratory shot out of the trees, go for it. But if your goal is lower scores, do not take on unnecessary risk. If in doubt, chip it out. So, going to walk you through some shot patterns and approach strategy just to give you a couple of examples. So again, we've got our green, we've got the hole, pins tucked slightly left of center, we've got a bunker short left, and we've got water on the left as well. So let's say this player takes dead aim right at the pin because, again, like the example at the beginning, we're in a match play situation here. It's all square going down the last. Your opponent's on the green. You've got to make par or birdie to win the match. So if you did this, say, let's say you play 20 rounds a year and you're in this scenario 20 times over the year, well, here's what your shot pattern would probably look like. 50% of your balls would finish left, 50 would finish to the right, 50 would be more short, 50% would be more long. So in this example, we've hit, over the course of a year, playing 20 rounds with this strategy going for the pin, we've hit 1, 2, 3, 4 balls in the water and 1, 2 in the bunker. Maybe hit 1, 2, 3, 4 just short and right, but most of these, I would say this one, this one, this one, this one, these 4, probably okay. This one, though, a bit tricky. Got to go over the bunker. And then we've hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 shots, 8 balls on the green. This one's just off the back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7 balls on the green when we're going for the pin. So you might get lucky. You might hit this one next to the pin and you might actually end up winning the match. The issue with that is if that is your behavior going for the pin in a high stress situation, if you do pull it off the first time, you'll be inclined to try it again next time. And guess what? The next shot might be the one that finishes in the water. So proper strategy is about playing the percentages. And I'm going to give you an example of that. So the next example, we're going to use a player, same scenario. We're going to get the player to aim where the space is. So here, where is the space? Well, there's no space left and short. There's no space left. The space is really to the right and long. We'll say that this is all just, general rough around the back and to the right. So let's pick a new aim point and see what happens. So you can see the new aim point. This is as Tiger would explain it, this is the spot that he's committing to, slightly beyond the pin and slightly to the right. Potentially, we've taken an extra club here. So interesting. No balls in the bunker here. No balls on the water. We've missed the green 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, but all these are relatively simple chip shots, lots of green to work with. And we've hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 of the 20 shots are on the green. So we've hit the green over 50% of the time. So Interestingly, this is the exact same dispersion, exact same shot pattern. So when we're going for the pin, the closest shot finished here. When we were going for our spot, long and right, this ball right next to the pin, you can see, is actually finished closer. So ironically, we aimed to the space, and on this particular shot, we've actually hit it closer. So on average, over the course of the year, this strategy of aiming to the space, you're going to be scoring lower scores for the entire year, and your handicap is going to come down as a result of that. So just to zoom out, I want to go a little bit more in detail on what it would look and feel like hitting these approach shots from, say, the fairway. So we've got a ball down here at the bottom. We're in the middle of the fairway. Same scenario coming down the 18th hole. So let's say you're a player who, and we'll just say this is like a 100-yard shot into the green. Let's say you're a player who hits it fairly straight. Okay, so your aim point would be right of the pin and slightly long of the pin as well. So aiming kind of back right portion of the green. So this is your spot. You want to commit at that spot, and you'll get 50% of the balls will finish here and 50% of the balls will finish to the right. Now, a couple examples with this play, right? Let's say you hit one and you're committing to this spot and you accidentally have the club face a little bit too closed at impact, meaning that the ball starts more left. Well, guess what? There's still plenty of space here. Your ball probably finishes pretty darn close to the pin. Your playing opponent looks back at you and says, whoa, that was a really aggressive shot you played there. Great shot. But you're actually thinking to yourself, you know what? My spot was right at the pin. All I did was take committed action to that spot. On this occasion, my face happened to be closed, and the pin just so happened to be left of where I was aiming. So your opponent thinks you've been really aggressive when actually you've done the opposite of that. You've been conservative. You've aimed at the space. You've committed to that. And it just so happened the ball's gone left, as it will 50% of the time relative to where you're aiming over the course of 20 rounds. And the pin just happens to be there. Now, another example would be, again, you're committing to the same spot. But let's say you hit one flush and it goes dead straight and it finishes exactly where you are aiming. That same opponent turns to you and thinks, just, average shot to the right side of the green. But in your head, you're thinking, you know what? I have literally just hit the perfect golf shot. I've hit it exactly where I was aiming. This is success. Okay. Similarly, you could hit a shot, where you are aiming same point, but the face is a little bit open at impact, and the ball just so happens to miss the green, but on the right-hand side. Well, guess what? Today, the pin wasn't on that side of the green. You've got space. You've avoided the danger on the side, on the left-hand side. This is a good leave. You've got plenty green to work with. You're going to score a par, bogey at worst, really, in this scenario. So to go into now different shot shapes, so we're going to talk about right to left. So if you're curving the ball from right to left or left to right. So we'll start with right to left. So if you were a player who starts the ball right and wants to curve it left, well, if you try and start the ball at this spot here with a draw, well, it's more likely to finish left and it might creep over into the water here. So for you, a better strategy would be, right, I'm going to aim the center of my shot pattern slightly right of my spot. So you're actually trying to start it a little bit more to the right and then letting it curve off to the left. If you were trying to curve it from left to right, well, if you aimed at this spot and started on that spot and it curved right, well, it's maybe going to miss a little bit too far to the right. Well, no dramas because there's plenty of space there. But ideally, you would shift the center of your shot pattern slightly right, slightly left of the space you'd be committing to this spot, somewhere between the pin and your spot, trying to start it on that and allowing it to fade off. If you just so happen to hit a straight shot, well, the ball is probably going to finish pretty close to the pin. So going back to a previous point, if you shape the ball left to right or right to left, doesn't matter to me. You only want to be shaping it a little bit, and you only want to aim as far left or right as there's space. So again, I'll give you another example. So we'll use that left to right shape as an example. So let's say you're curving the ball too much today, right? And you decide to aim left side of the green to allow for that big curvature. So if you aim left side of the green here and you hit a dead straight shot, you just so happen to hit a dead straight shot where you were aiming. Well, if you hit it short, it's probably in the bunker. And if you hit it the right distance, it's likely it might kick into the water. So you've just been punished for a perfectly straight shot where you were aiming. A much, much better strategy for you would be to only aim where the space is. So even for a fade, I'd be getting you to aim. Where's the space? Well, there's no space. There's honestly no space left of this pin. So we'd always be aiming somewhere between this aim point here and the pin, somewhere right of the pin, even for a left to right fade. Why? Because if it does fade, it's okay finishing up here. There's plenty of space. And if it just does happen to go dead straight, well, you're golden. You're right in the heart of the green, close to the pin. The opposite, let's look at a player who's really kind of curving a lot from right to left. Well, in this scenario, let's say you decide to aim way right of the green. Okay, so again, in this scenario, if you hit a perfectly dead straight shot, well, you know what? No real drama here. It's just off to the right. There's plenty of space. Now, the other thing is with this player is because we're curving it from right to left, the more right you aim, the more your club path is likely to get from the inside. And if the face is a touch too close, this is more likely to hook and curve a lot from right to left. So I would say a better strategy for the draw player would be only aim as far right as you'd want a straight shot to finish. So in this example, potentially aiming right edge of the green or somewhere between, 5 yards right of the edge of the green. And then if you do hit a straight shot to here, there's no dramas. And if it does curve left, you're going to be probably pretty close to the middle of the green. But I hope that kind of all makes sense. If you have any questions on this strategy, obviously it's a lot easier to discuss in person, and we can maybe go over this in a private session. So to summarize, what we want with strategy is discipline. Following this process, if you do this, I guarantee you will shoot lower scores, not by making more birdies, but by reducing the amount of bogeys, doubles, triples, quadruple bogeys, and lost balls in the hazards. I want you to stick to the game plan, and to do that, you need to be consistent with this. So every shot must have a purpose and a clear strategy. So always remember the question, where's the space? Pick your spot, which should be where the space is. Have a clear intention where that spot is. Aim the center of your shot pattern if you hit it straight at that spot. Again, as we discussed, if you're slightly right to left curve or the opposite curve, you'd want to adjust the aim point to account for that. And commit to your spot. Take committed action to your intention. I'm just going to scroll back to give you an example on that, right? So let's say this green is maybe 30 yards wide from left to right. And let's say I've decided I'm going to hit a fade on this particular shot. So for me, hitting a fade in this scenario, I would probably be aiming long of the pin, slightly to the right of the pin, and so long and right of the pin. So somewhere around about this zone. And what I would do is I say, that is my spot. I am going to commit to that spot. And if I hit a dead straight shot that doesn't fade, so fade is from left to right, it's going to be golden. It's going to be perfect. If, however, it does fade, it's probably going to finish somewhere front right side of the green, which is perfect. Going to score par from there, as long as I don't free putt. Now, when things usually go wrong is when I do not pick a clear spot and I do not fully commit to the spot. So, for example, let's say that's my spot, just slightly long and right of the pin. If I do not have a clear intention for that spot, if I do not commit to the spot, there's a couple of things, a couple of scenarios that could happen. Well, rather than committing, I could be worrying about the water or the bunker here, and I end up leaving the club face open, and I end up missing the green off to the right. Again, it's not the worst case scenario. But let's say potentially I don't have a clear intention, I don't have a clear spot, and I start getting a bit too aggressive, a little bit too greedy, and I decide that I'm going to go for this. Well, if I'm aiming, at the pin or long of the pin up in this zone, if I accidentally have the club face a little bit too close to impact because I'm being too aggressive, well, guess what? That ball's in the water every single time. So speaking just from experience here, my poor shots on the golf course that cost me high numbers, they are not caused due to a swing fault or anything like that. And it's the same for you. It's 99% of the time, it's I did not have a clear intention. Therefore, I never committed to that intention. Or perhaps I did have a clear intention, but for some reason in my swing, I got distracted. I got panicked about the water, and I've made some type of compensation in swing, not from a technical error, it's a psychological error, and it's a lack of commitment. Last point is I want you to accept the outcome of your shots. You cannot control the outcome of your shot. Winning requires luck, therefore play the percentages, play conservatively, but commit to your spots on the golf course. So one really powerful tool for you to use is a website called Pro Visualizer. So the images of Murrayfield, Pro Visualizer uses Google Earth, and it's got some really cool tools. So all you need to do is go to provisualizer.com, type in your home course, click search. It'll take you to your golf course. What you can then do is start to look at the holes from a bird's eye view, and it'll give you a really unique, different perspective of each hole on your course. Think about the holes you potentially struggle on, and definitely start with tee shot strategy. Make sure you're playing the right club off the tee. Again, it should be driver first, and adjust down if there isn't space. So the next group session, we're going to look a little bit more at psychology. We're going to look at your pre-shot routine. We're going to, some of the points we touched on today in terms of having a clear intention. We're going to dive deeper into what is intention, what does it mean to have a clear intention, and we're going to talk about how to take committed action to that intention. So thank you. I hope this has been helpful. I would highly recommend you come back and watch this video as the weather begins to improve, potentially as we move into April and the golfing season gets going. A lot of information, a lot to digest. Hopefully it's dispelled some of the myths on course strategy. If you want to go out on the golf course with me on your private session and actually do this, we can of course do this at Swanston. Your homework is, remember to contact me, send me a message on Coach Now, send me some times you'd like to catch up and have a call on the phone, and we'll get back on track and really start making some good progress going forward. So thank you once again. Looking forward to seeing you all soon. If I don't see you before Christmas, have a Merry Christmas and all the best for the new year.